Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 3. I just wanted to clarify that over here in Daniel 11:23, where it says, "And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, and shall come up, and shall become strong with a small people." I believe that the league or joining together here has a dual meaning. I believe it's talking about the joining together of the true prince of the covenant with the bride, as well as the joining together of the Antichrist with the few people, which would be the oligarchy of the 10 kings that will rule with the Antichrist for 1 hour. So there's going to be two joining together, two leagues that are going to occur at the same time. One will be the true prince of the covenant, which is Jesus, with the bride, and after that league he will begin to work deceitfully, as well as the league that's made with the Antichrist with the 10 kings. And this league has to do with joining together as well, because this is all about intermingling DNA. The bottom line is that it all has to do with DNA. And so after this league is created and the joining together of the bride and Christ, then the Antichrist will begin to work deceitfully. So I believe verse 22 refers to the rapture, and it's convenient that it's in verse 22 because it's in the Song of Solomon's, where it talks about the bride and the bridegroom and the consummation of the covenant. It's in Matthew 22, where Jesus says that the kingdom of God is like a marriage that a father made for his son. And there's 3 sets of 22 books in the Bible for a total 66. And there's 22 chapters in the book of Revelation. And I actually wasn't planning to say all that, but I just happened to notice that the Strong's number for the word league is 22 and 66. So again, that would represent the entire Bible, because it's 3 sets of 22 books for a total of 66, and the entire Bible is all about the joining together. I believe that's what's represented by the 2 covenants, the 2 testaments. The Old Testament and the New Testament is a representation of that as well. So it's interesting that Strong's number 2266, and these numbers also have to do with DNA. I've explained before why the number 22 has to do with DNA, because there's 22 autosomes. The 23rd is the sex chromosome. And I've explained the number 6, how I believe that has to do with DNA, because you have a codon, which is a sequence of 3 nucleotides, and it's matched up with an anticodon of 3 nucleotides for a total of 6. And that's what the DNA code is made up of. A sequence of codons matched up with anticodons. It's also in verse 22 in Genesis 2, where it says, "And the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man." So this is a type and shadow of the bride being brought to the bridegroom, which is Jesus. So this is a type and shadow of the marriage or the wedding that's talked about in Matthew 22. And it's in verse 22 in Jeremiah 31, where it says, "How long wilt thou go about, O thou backsliding daughter? For the Lord hath created a new thing in the earth. A woman shall compass a man." And I talked about how this is the consummation of the covenant as well. And as you can see, this is coming up in verse 22. And it's interesting that it's in Jeremiah 31. I've talked about how it was in 31 AD when Jesus was cut off as a Messiah, but he was also 31 years old when he began his ministry. And it's in Jeremiah 31 verses 31 through 33, where it talks about the new covenant. So those were the years of the Lord's ministry. It was from 31 AD to 33 AD, and he was 31 years old to 33 years old when he was cut off. And incidentally, there was 31 matches when I had put in the words shark and yesh, so I believe that's even more confirmation that the shark represents Jesus. It represents the ark, and then this man would represent the bride. But as I said in my last video, I believe it also represents Jesus, because Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, and he said no sign would be given except for the sign of Jonah, who was in the belly of a fish for 3 days and 3 nights. And I'm beginning to believe that the fish was most likely a shark, because I had done a Google search to see if it was a whale or a shark, and I came up with this article in the Blue Letter Bible. This is the very first link that came up. But as you can see, he's explaining in here that the word that was used in Hebrew was a great fish. It doesn't specifically say what type of fish, but it's explaining over here that the only 2 types of fish that it could have been would be either, it says over here, the next point that needs to be made is that there are creatures living in the sea which are capable of swallowing a human being whole. Sperm whales have been known to swallow usually large objects, including a 15-foot long shark. The whale shark, as well as the blue whale, also has the capacity of swallowing a man whole. Sperm whales and whale sharks are not unknown in that part of the world. So the 2 types of fish that it could either be would be a whale or a shark. And so I believe it was most likely a shark, because of the fact that shark rhymes with ark, and I believe Jonah being inside of the fish was also a type and shadow of the bride being protected in the ark, as Jonah was protected in the shark for 3 days and 3 nights. I believe it's more likely at this point that the fish that swallowed Jonah was probably a shark. Okay, so the point that I wanted to make before I get back to Ezekiel 17 is that there's going to be a good league or a good joining together that's going to occur, as well as the evil league or the evil joining together. And like I said, this all has to do with DNA. And so there's a good seed that's involved, as well as a bad seed. As you can see from Galatians 3:16, it says, "Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not unto seeds, as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ." So the seed that it's talking about here is Christ, and it's in the singular. And the word seed in the Greek is the word sperma. It's the word sperm. And it's interesting that it's G4690. So again, you have the number 46 representing the 46 chromosomes, and then the number 90, but within that you have the 6 and the 9, which I believe is also a representation of DNA and the anti-parallel nature of the DNA. And so the point that I wanted to make is that the DNA has to come from somewhere, so you can't attribute the sperm or the DNA just to the Antichrist and say that there's no sperm involved or DNA involved when it comes to Christ, because that defeats the whole purpose of the paradigm of the seed of the woman versus the seed of the serpent. There has to be 2 seeds, and the seed has to come from somewhere. So the seed that brought forth Jesus, the sperm that brought forth Jesus, came from God, and then the sperm that brought the line that will bring forth the Antichrist comes from Satan. Okay, so what we have here is what's depicted in Zechariah 3:1. It says, "And he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him." I believe this is the point that we're at right now, and I believe that's what's being depicted by this Google Doodle from March 17th. Okay, so now I want to get back to Ezekiel 17 and starting from about verse 13 and explain why I believe this is a representation of the mark of the beast, of the abomination of desolation. But getting back to this part over here, which was actually verse 5, I'm not sure what was meant over here exactly by the fruitful field. I'm not sure if this is metaphorical, if it's talking about Mystery Babylon, or if this is talking about something literal, if this is going all the way back to Adam and Eve and what happened in the garden, because the Antichrist will be Satan in the flesh, so this could be going all the way back to the time of the garden, because over here it's saying that thou mayest remember and be confounded and never open thy mouth any more because of thy shame, when I have forgiven thee all that thou hast done, saith the Lord. So this seems to be going back in time over here in the beginning of this matrix. Okay, but then starting from verse 12, it says, Say now to the rebellious house, know ye not what these things mean? Tell them the king of Babylon is come to Jerusalem, and hath taken the king thereof and the princes thereof, and led them with him to Babylon, and hath taken of the king's seed, and made a covenant with him, and hath taken an oath of him, and hath also taken the mighty of the land. And if you look at the word king's seed, well, one of the things that I noticed in the Greek is that it doesn't actually say king. It says the kingdom that he has received from the sperm of the kingdom. And if you look at it in the Hebrew, the word for king is actually kingship, royalty, kingly office. So this is not necessarily a specific king that it's talking about. It's talking about taking seed from the kingdom. And then it says, and has covenanted towards him a covenant. And over here it's saying entered into him. But in the Hebrew it's saying he hath made a covenant with him and hath taken an oath of him. He also taken the mighty. And if you look at the word mighty, it's interesting because it's actually the word ram or pillar. And of course there's a ram or sheep that's depicted in this imagery. And I believe the word pillar has to do with DNA, but I'm not sure what happened here exactly. But he seems to have taken from the king's seed, or from the seed of the kingdom, and made a covenant. And he hath also taken of the mighty of the land, and the mighty means ram in the Hebrew. And then in the Greek it uses this word, which is the same word that's used in Daniel 9:27 when it talks about Messiah the Prince. But this word is in the plural, so it's talking about the leaders, which is what the word prince actually means. In the Greek it's this word right here. But this one is in the plural. And then it says that the kingdom might be base, that it might not lift itself up, but that by keeping of his covenant it might stand. But he rebelled against him in sending his ambassadors into Egypt, that they might give him horses and much people. Shall he prosper? Shall he escape that doeth such things? Or shall he break the covenant and be delivered? And it's interesting that there was a covenant that was made in 2013 around Passover, and then it was broken around December 23rd. I was just watching this video earlier this morning. Okay, now where this gets interesting is in verse 17, because it uses a word here that is a form of the word hadavma, which is the word that's used for the mark of the beast. And so I want to talk a lot more about this, but I'll have to continue in the next video. Thanks for watching, and God bless you.